Hi guys and gals, Shane Stevenson here at the Buffalo Naval Park, and for today's video I'm going to be talking a little bit about the dredging process for dry dock, and as the title says, past as prologue, a little bit about the history of the dredging for our vessels. And I'll show you what I considered a very startling picture and then the resolution of what that picture shows. So I've got a PowerPoint here. I'll try to keep this short, though I do get a little verbose. Dredging in dry dock, past as prologue. So what we're seeing here is what you can see if you Google map downtown Buffalo. All right, you zoom in, you'll see us up in our current nesting port positions. Up to the upper left there, but in the center you'll see the green triangle that represents the Sullivans, 1977 to circa 2002. The white triangle, USS Little Rock, 1977 to circa 2002. Then you'll see some yellow dashed lines along the pier and the big yellow box, which was our rolling stock and our museum building. One of the reasons why this original initial site was chosen was because this was the central wharf during the days of the Erie Canal. You can see the water coming and it ends, and then you'll see the commercial slip that then comes down to the Buffalo River. That is the westernmost terminus of the Erie Canal. And the central wharf, this grassy area where the triangles are and the yellow box, was filled with forwarding companies and lading companies to the tune of about 180 just crammed here. And of course, why was that needed? Well, you couldn't transport things from the east on lake freighters, and you couldn't transport them continuing west on packet boats or canal boats or barges. So this was the stop-off point for the lake freighters and the packet canal boats. Offloading materials and humans, onloading onto the lake freighters, offloading raw product and humans off the lake freighters onto the packet boats or the canal boats. And so that's why this area grew exponentially so quickly. That little green area around where the yellow box is also the home of Wells Fargo. Right, so both they settled in Buffalo, established this firm, and then again, kind of they're known for being a bank today, but they were a forwarding company for a long time and probably still are, right? So that is why our founding fathers for the Naval Park decided to put these attractions and our museum ships there, because it was teeming with activity up until the 1950s. So it was about 100 years or so, 110 years, that it was really the center of lake traffic here in the Buffalo and Western New York area. And then railroads become king, and as the cycle of archaeology and the growth of cities and the fall of cities happens, it's all cyclic. So by the time 1977 comes around, it is just gravelly, railroady tracks wasteland. So here's a couple never before seen photos. All right, these were from a slide collection, and I digitized the slides. Really interesting stuff. This is probably from about 1986. So you see the Little Rock on the left. You can't see the Sullivans, but it's just aft of the Little Rock. Then you have the nice rolling stock space, the museum building on the right, and then even our parking lot, which was for us. And then we could even, during Sabres games or concerts, we could charge people to park there. So that was a steady stream of income that we lost when we moved to our current spot. You'll see our Voodoo, which we still have. You'll see, well, at the time it was thought to be a Sabre jet, so tying in the Buffalo Sabres hockey team. And so they painted it blue and gold. Lo and behold, it was actually a Fury. All right. Here's another nice overhead shot now of Little Rock. You can see the PTF boat, the rolling stock, the planes, the museum building, and things like that. So this is where we were from 77 to about 2002, when the Erie Canal Harbor Development Corporation found some ruins in that commercial slip and said, hey, we'd like to retell the story of this being the western terminus of the Erie Canal. So thankfully they contributed to our move to the tune of probably about 90 to 95% of the cost of moving. So now we're looking at about 2002, 2003. You'll see one of our mooring towers there. Now those are embedded into the Buffalo River, but I believe I've been told there's bolts. So they do separate right at the bottom of the riverbed. So instead of having to dig down again for this dry dock ships maintenance program, we don't have to rip them out 10 to 15 feet into the bedrock. We could just undo the bolts, slide it out. Now I worry about those supports and those beams. How low are they? Or if they're going to be 5 feet up, what is that going to do to the Croaker and the Sullivans? We don't want them banging into something if it's 5 feet off the riverbed. In the lower left, you'll see some dredging occurring, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you have a nice photo of the Sullivans moving next to the Little Rock to prepare to go into her current nesting position. Here's another image of that, and it actually looks like there's a little portside list on Little Rock. Or maybe it's just a bad paint job at the bootstrap. So they would move the Sullivans out. They may currently at this time be dredging. I believe the Sullivans stayed in the Buffalo River like this for a day or two while they were probably finishing up the dredging. Our props. We always talk about the props being cut for this move. Here's examples of that. The shafts are no longer available, but we do have the props. We need to work with the company to get them bronzed up, but they are ready to return. And even on the right blade, you can see some of the bending away from the camera. That's shown some damage while the ship was here since 1977. One of the things that I recently learned, though, is about the rudder, and that's very disappointing. If you follow the USS Kidd and their dry dock, specifically with their rudder, all Fletchers had like the World War II rudder, right? Worst turning radius in the Navy, all of those Fletchers had. So for the Cold War in 1951, before the Sullivans went to Korea, and presumably around the time for the USS Kidd as well, they added a larger, deeper, more hefty rudder to help with that turning radius. The Kidd had to cut theirs to get her down to Homa, and they're okay with that because they're going to use that to redesign and reconfigure the smaller World War II. For ours, I thought we had the intact Cold War rudder. Apparently, at this time as well, they cut it off. So that was pretty... I'm sorry, they didn't cut it off. They cut some of it off as a protective measure against the riverbed. So that is pretty distressing to me. So we're going to take a look. That's going to be one of the areas that we also highlight in dry dock, is how much was cut off? What does it look like? Can some fabrication be redone to weld the full size of that important Cold War rudder? So we'll keep you posted on that. Now this is the map that I found in the collections. It's a river elevation map. I'm sorry if that's not the right term, but of course it's taking soundings and surveys and getting all the bumps and lumps of the Buffalo River. Now the two ships are superimposed, and that's what kind of startled me at first. So you see the Little Rock is in blue, the Sullivans is in green, and of course, right in the middle, how can you miss that huge slope? So when I came across this, I saw that the ships were there, and I said, well, what is going on here? So I reached out to Bidco, who had done this move, right? And Bidco, we still work with them today, and they're still a very strong partner of ours. I said, hey, Bidco, what's going on with the slope here? How did this get resolved? And they wrote back and said, oh, you know what? No worries. This was a map just kind of showing the ships superseded. They weren't actually in their position at this time, but this showed us where the important areas to dredge needed to happen. And of course, the slope was one of the biggest areas. So they dredged it out. And in total, they moved about 20,000 tons of rock and soil and silt to give you a nice smooth silty bottom. And then they moved the ships into their respective spots. Well, now it's been 22 years. You got garbage cans. I'm sure there's, grocery carts down there. I can't imagine what's down there, but if you want to find out, come on, let's go magnet fishing. You'll probably find some nice watery treasures. But when we prepare to move the Little Rock, the Sullivans, and Croaker, you can bet that we will be dredging again to bring it back down to this smooth area. And of course, why is that? April of 2022, we impacted on the bottom during a seiche that was going back to Cleveland and Toledo. And that's what caused the hull, not collapse, but the gash and the strakes on both sides, port and starboard. So we are going to make sure that when the ships leave, before we put the Little Rock back, that there's some serious dredging going on again. So as of now, this was prior to the ships moving. There was a slope there. Don't know what it was made out of, but thankfully they took care of it before the ships actually got into that position. So I've shown this image before. So what's going on here? This is the scope of work, even to get the ships moving. And now we've slated out of the $21 million, we've slated about 7 million of this for this scope of work here. One of the clocks striking at the right time. So we've got to dredge around the Little Rock, slide her out with tugs, and move her aft. You'll see the red is one of the mooring towers and pylons that you saw in the earlier image. That will need to be unbolted. Hopefully we can just unbolt it, and that there's still enough clearance for the Croaker and the Sullivans. And then the light blue line is the Croaker. She can slide out, and the green line is the Sullivans. And before we put the Little Rock back, here comes the dredgers, and we are going to scoop out that whole pier. So when the Croaker and Sullivans comes back, she might have 6 or 7 feet as opposed to 3 feet or so, which is roughly what we estimate the distance between the riverbed and the keel is now. We can double that and ensure that for the next 10 years, we should not be impacting anything on the bottom, because we will continue to get seiches. So what is passed as prologue, we had to dredge to get us here. We now will need to dredge for the ship's maintenance period. Well, I hope you enjoyed this little look into what I found in the collections, the little startling slope there, what the hell is going on with this. Please leave questions, comments, things like that. We're beginning to ramp up everything. Destination Dry Dock, the first episode, will be coming out next week. I'm sorry, Thursday. All right, so that's episode 1. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving everyone an insider's look. And that even includes meetings with the city and dry docking companies and our project management companies. So if you follow, things for like football and hockey, and they have shows and episodes about how do you figure out who to draft and things like that. That was my inspiration for this. Putting cameras in meetings, talking about dry dock, will give people a really nice inside look. And I don't think museum ships have done it up until this point. So that kicks off. This is an introductory video on Thursday night. It premieres, so make sure you check that out. And for this video, you have questions, comments, please leave them below. As you know, I pretty much answer every single one of them. And you know what? Thanks for all of your continued support, and we'll see you again soon.